Recently, I had a chance to sit down and speak with producer Scott Wallace, who filmed the piece you just saw.
Scott, thanks very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Now, we've seen that the Yanomami people are remote and scattered, and you were the first journalist allowed back to the territory by the government since the controversy. Was it what you expected?
Not really. You know, looking back on a lot of the literature and the traditional photographs of the Yanomami, I expected to see something more primitive. I mean, clearly the conditions are primitive and the culture is still vibrant, but there are changes. You can see, you know, Indians wearing Nike shorts, you know, and they have shotguns in many instances, and probably most importantly, they have outboard motors and skiffs which move them around the rivers. It's like their superhighway, the Orinoco and the tributaries. Bringing also those rivers, not only are they moving people up and down the rivers a lot in boats, but, you know, word reaches Yanomami villages deep in the mountains inland that out on the riverbanks they can find medicine, they can find Western goods perhaps. Maybe their village will even get from government largesse a motor, and they'll be nearer the schools too. The schools are acting as a magnet, the mission posts, because the missionaries operate the schools.
Now, one of the figureheads of change amongst the Yanomami people seems to be Napoleon Chagnon. Tell us a little bit about him and the controversy that surrounds him.
Napoleon Chagnon is an American anthropologist who did groundbreaking work among the Yanomami mostly in the 60s and 70s, wrote a very well-known ethnographic study of the Yanomami called The Fierce People. His work has always been controversial. His colleagues have charged that he trumped up or emphasized Yanomami violence and aggression, and that he portrayed an image of the Yanomami that basically justified an ideological program of extermination on the part of the Brazilian government. He's been alleged to have done all sorts of things, from reckless distribution of trade goods like axes, machetes, and other things, to forcing the Yanomami to violate their own cultural taboos.
Now, you've met him. You've investigated the whole story. In your opinion, are the allegations true?
I would say there's some measure of truth to some of them, and others don't really hold up to the test. An allegation that Chagnon and a group of scientists was responsible for starting a measles epidemic among the Yanomami appears not to be true. Some of the other charges against Chagnon are a little more difficult to so easily dismiss, I would say.
Well, Scott, thanks so much for coming in and sharing with us your unique insights. Now, if you want to read Scott's story, you can. It's in this month's edition of National Geographic Adventure magazine.